Yesterday, I passed the 500-mile marker on the Pacific Crest Trail. And so, in honor of this milestone, I thought that I would share with you what I've learned in this section in case you're looking to plan your own PCT journey and you're kind of worried about the beginning of the trail. First and foremost, this section of the trail has wild temperature swings. One day you can be hiking in 90-degree weather, the next you can be hiking in snow. Often it's hot during the day and hovering right around freezing or below freezing at night. So just be prepared for those wild weather swings. I have a 20-degree sleeping bag. I'm a cold sleeper, and some nights I really have been wishing that I had gotten a lower rating of sleeping bag. I also never leave home without a puffy insulated jacket. I say these things because I heard of a woman who showed up at Cleef to start her thru hike with just a thin sweater and nothing more. So make sure that you are prepared for that wide range of temperatures that you could get in this section of the PCT. Next, it's incredibly sunny on this section of the PCT. Often in the middle of the day, you'll go hours without being able to find even a small bit of shade. So make sure you're bringing a bunch of sun protection with you. So that might mean a sun hoodie or sun shirt, sun gloves, hat, definitely a lot of sunscreen. I also have a sun umbrella, which I really like. I definitely don't use it every day, but on the sections of trail that are super exposed and there's not any shade, it's a big help. It can make me feel like I'm hiking in weather that's 10 degrees cooler once I have that sun umbrella up. And it's nice if I want to take a break and I can't find shade anywhere to give me a little bit of shade. You might think of this section as just hot desert, but that is not really the case. There are a couple of different sections where you're climbing up in elevation. I'm not sure if it's officially alpine, but if it's not, it's nearing alpine, and you go from desert to pine forest where you get colder weather and often snow and ice. So the first section that this happens is around Idlewild, the San Jacinto Wilderness section. So sometimes you are going to need, depending on when you start, depending on the weather that year, you might need micro spikes, you might need an ice axe, you might even need crampons if it's a crazy snow year or you start really early. I would recommend checking the San Jacinto John report. Just Google that, San Jacinto John report. He puts out regular reports about the conditions in this section, what equipment you might need, and he talks specifically about the Pacific Crest Trail. This section, often you are on the side of a cliff, very exposed, lots of blowdowns, like you're climbing over them on the side of a cliff. So it could be pretty hairy if there is snow and ice. I would also suggest definitely paying attention to the weather in this section. If the weather is going to be bad, perhaps go wait it out in Idlewild. But if you are going to send spikes, ice axe, anything here, I'd recommend sending it to the Paradise Valley Cafe. It's just like a mile off trail at around mile 152. You can grab it before you go into this section. And then also, if you decide you want to wait out some weather in this section, go into Idlewild before you come up into the San Jacinto Wilderness, the Paradise Valley Cafe is a good place to go and hitch to get into Idlewild. The next section that you might need this equipment is Mount Baden-Powell. That's somewhere around like mile 375. Again, you're climbing up in elevation, you could hit snow, you could hit ice. So just be paying attention to those conditions and bring that equipment in if the conditions call for it. Next sort of hairy section is an interesting one. That's the Mission Creek section. And that is before you get to Big Bear. So in 2023, a hurricane came through. I guess it was the remnants of a hurricane. I don't really know the difference, but just whatever. Anyway, a hurricane came through, turned a small creek into a huge raging river, knocked out 7 or 8 miles of the PCT. So now, instead of just going on straight trail during this section, you are actually walking up through a creek bed for 7 or 8 miles. Then you have to find your way back onto the PCT, and then there are a few sections where there are washes. I would suggest in this section, if you're not comfortable route finding and being a little more adventurous, go with some friends. If you're solo when you get there and you don't want to be alone, just hang around and wait, because the PCT is busy. Other people will come through. Ask them if you can hike with them. Don't get out there and be terrified by yourself. if you're not comfortable. I actually really enjoyed this section. I never felt unsafe, but I know some other people who were very uncomfortable in this section and did feel unsafe. So there's a wide range here. But if you saw the rescue on the PCT from April 2025, it was a helicopter, very harrowing, from the side of a cliff. This was in the Mission Creek section. Someone made a wrong turn, ended up on a cliff. They couldn't go up, they couldn't go down. They had to call for help. Kind of sketchy. I also found some tremendously helpful comments on Far Out giving specific directions on how to get through this section. I followed those to a T and I had no issues. So stop right before the Mission Creek section starts. It's around mile 226. Check the Far Out comments. I promise they will be very helpful. Shout out to Aloha. You were so darn helpful and I really appreciate you. And one other thing about this section, if you don't know, cairns are piles of rocks that are often put up in order to help you get through a section where there is not a clear trail. In this section, there are a lot of cairns. In some areas, once you're back on the PCT, there are some little washouts, and cairns have been built to guide you back up onto the trail. So look out for those. I didn't realize that not everyone knew what cairns were. They're not just decorative. They're supposed to be used in order to help you follow a trail. So look for those piles of rocks. I would also say, don't sweat the logistics. You don't have to go into the trail planning every little bit. You don't have to plan campsite to campsite for a long stretch of time. Just go in, look at how much food you think you need, plan that from town to town. Always bring a little bit of extra for safety reasons in case something happens. And then you can just plan day by day, campsite to campsite. It doesn't have to be this big thing that you plan in advance. And also, don't sweat the logistics of going into towns. I haven't really had to hitchhike yet, and I'm over 500 miles in. I've arrived at roads where I wanted to hitchhike in town, and there's often just been someone already there, or someone pulls over immediately and is like, hey, do you need a ride to town? It's not a big deal. You will get to town. So try not to sweat the small stuff. You'll figure it all out as you go. The logistics you will need to pay the most attention to in this section is the availability of water. It's not uncommon for there to be long water carries of 15 or so miles. So you're going to want to check every single day where the water is. If you're using Far Out, it's a really helpful resource. People will leave comments about if those water sources are still flowing. So you're going to want to really plan around the availability of water. That was something new for me on this trail. I've had a few long water carries before, but not consistently day to day like this. So when you are planning, you're not just planning campsite to campsite, you're also planning water to water. So just be aware that you're going to need to do that all throughout this section. A rule of thumb that I was given was that you're going to need 1 liter of water for every 4 miles walked in the desert. I find that's a little much for me. I don't actually drink that much, but it's a good starting point and you can kind of figure out from there how much you're going to need every single day. Okay, I'm going to start walking, but I feel like I might think of a couple more on the way, so hang on. I thought of another one. Taking care of your feet. I would say for your hiking shoes, size up at least a half size, maybe a full size. Your feet are going to swell when you're on them all day and you're carrying a backpack. I usually wear a size 7.5 shoes, so out here I wear a size 8.5. Also, you might want to consider wearing sock liners. I find they really help for blister prevention. A popular brand is Injinji. They have the toe socks. I just wear some silk blend ones from REI without the toes, just like regular sock shape. And then finally, I would consider bringing some gaiters. Dirty Girl is a really popular brand. They help to keep dirt and dust and everything out of your shoes. Also good for blister prevention. I have a brand, I just bought some off of Etsy, but Dirty Girl is really popular. So here's a look. You can see my sock liners. That's the white, the Darn Tough socks, the gaiters, and my oboes. This funny Dr. Seuss looking plant behind me is poodle dog bush. Learn to identify it and don't ever touch it. It grows in burn zones and it can cause severe skin irritation. Poodle dog bush. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. I am vlogging my way through the Pacific Crest Trail, so if you want to know what it's really like, check out my PCT playlist. I also have a bunch of other videos from a bunch of other trails. I love hiking, backpacking, and travel. And if you do too, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Thanks for being here. I'll see you later.